Well, it's time now for MediaWatch, and I'm joined now by Emma James. Hi there, Emma.
Hi there.
Now, very much at the top of our news bulletins during the course of this Friday, the visit to Paris by the Turkish president. What are people saying about how it went?
Well, I've not so much been looking at how it went, more the reaction to it that kind of preceded the actual words that we heard from the two men, because it was greeted with a lot of anger online, and certainly from the cartoonists too. Emmanuel Macron receiving Erdogan, says "Nah, the cartoonist," and they've got the French president there explaining his new law against fake news, and he's saying, just like that, all your imprisonments will be justified, or are justified. And Erdogan saying to him, "You're a genius," which is a rather sarcastic take on the whole situation. This Twitter user, again, a similar kind of thought, Macron and Erdogan comparing their vision of freedom of expression. And this Twitter user goes on to say that it's an imagined conversation between the two men, with Macron saying it's their new digital anti-fake news service that's going to inundate or flood the social media services with government information to get rid of all of those things that are contradicting it. And Erdogan says, very impressive. Other views on this, Plantu, the French cartoonist, drawing attention to the fact that Turkey, of course, has a very poor record when it comes to jailing journalists. At the end of 2017, the CPJ, the Council for the Protection of Journalists, said that Turkey has the highest number of journalists in jail of anywhere in the world, 73 in total. That's out of a total of 262. And Elysée, a French, very well-known French television presenter, has issued this message reminding the president that he shouldn't forget the colleagues who are incarcerated in Turkey. For example, she says, clearly something very close to her own heart, her goddaughter is among them. This Twitter user too, pointing out really that it's slightly ironic that the French president just a few days ago was giving his New Year best wishes to the French press corps, and then a few days later, there he is, as they put here, inviting the bloke with the biggest prison for journalists to the Elysée Palace. Interestingly, Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Front, hasn't chosen to criticise Emmanuel Macron on this occasion. What she has pointed to instead is the fact that Erdogan's regime, which is killing off freedoms, that basically we have to put an end to their bid for membership of the EU. Other protests taking to the streets were made by the Femin protesters, the feminists who regularly bare their breasts and call certain politicians and public figures to account. They went out dressed as waitresses, carrying a menu that included, it was a cannibal lunch, they said, women carpaccio, mashed curds, boiled journalists, hashed human rights, and pudding of gays. Now, 4 of their members were arrested during the course of those protests. And what a lot of people are very angry about too is the Femin Twitter account, Femin France, has actually been closed down by Twitter today. And a lot of people really not understanding that, this man among them saying that there is neither a French law nor a condition of use that justifies this censorship.
Okay, so lots of discussion about the visit by the Turkish president before he even got here, as you say. Now, there's another story we've got our eye very closely fixed on, and we have done for the last couple of days. A book in Washington, everyone's talking about it, Fire and Fury. And big questions, too, about just who the man is who wrote it.
Yes, absolutely, because Michael Wolff, while he's very well known in certain circles, certainly isn't an internationally renowned journalist, or he wasn't until the release of this book. The New York Times has done a great profile on him. It's really interesting reading, very entertaining as well as enlightening. They refer to him as being a prime piranha in the Manhattan media pond, who's now risen to a new level of notoriety. They describe him really as something of a natty dresser with a taste for luxury and arsenic-laced prose. And it is quite cutting, a lot of the things that they say, but all this sort of fun stuff aside, should we actually trust what we're reading? Well, Steve Bannon has said nothing so far to contradict the quotes that are attributed to him in this book. Donald Trump, of course, a very different story there. He has said that he authorised zero access to the White House. I never spoke to him for the book. Look at this guy's past and watch what happens to him and Sloppy Steve. Sloppy Steve, a nod to Steve Bannon, of course. And there are inconsistencies in the excerpts that were released and have already been poured over. And the New York Times does say that Wolff's critics say he has a history of being casual with facts. So there is certainly a degree of scepticism about all of the information that is in this book. Now, one example that's come to light already is he claimed CNN reported the rather unsavoury sexual activities of Donald Trump back in January. It was according to a report into alleged Russian ties. He credited CNN with that. It was actually BuzzFeed who got the golden star, if you will, for breaking that particular story. There are, though, plenty of people vouching for the veracity of his book, including this woman who says that everything written about a particular dinner party that is reported there, everything was astonishingly accurate.
Okay, well, we'll just have to get our hands on a copy of it and read it for ourselves, won't we, Emma? Good weekend reading. Thank you very much indeed for that roundup.